Imagine being 17, draped in a saffron veil that smells of incense and wool, stepping into a villa bathed in twilight, believing the worst of your wedding day, behind you the chants, the sacrifices, the forced smiles. But as the door closes, sealing out the raucous crowd, you realize the night holds secrets your mother never fully whispered. Secrets involving a hidden alcove, a circle of watchful eyes, and a tradition that turns love into a ledger entry. You were promised a union of hearts. Instead, you're handed a script of submission. This isn't a fairy tale. This was the shadow side of marriage in Imperial Rome, a practice so veiled in taboo that even the poets skirted its edges, and later emperors buried its remnants under layers of reform. By the time the veil lifts from your eyes, Claudia will grasp the legacy her mother carried in silence. Rome's forgotten rite. One that bound women not just in matrimony, but in unbreakable chains of proof. The year was 118 CE, under the reign of Emperor Hadrian, a time when Rome's empire stretched vast, its laws intricate, and its traditions a blend of ironclad custom and creeping change. Claudia Valeria, daughter of the now widowed Livia Tersa, stood on the cusp of her own marital fate. Livia, who had endured her own harrowing initiation nearly 3 decades prior, had raised Claudia in the bustling port city of Ostia, where grain ships from Egypt docked daily, and merchants like her late husband Marcus had built fortunes. Claudia knew little of her father's world. He had died when she was a child, leaving Livia to manage the household with a quiet steel that masked deeper scars. Now, at 17, Claudia was betrothed to Gaius Aelius, a rising magistrate twice her age, his family tied to senatorial lines that demanded purity and legacy above all. The day had unfolded like a well-rehearsed play. Claudia's veil, the flammeum, glowed like embers in the afternoon sun, its color symbolizing both fire's warmth and the god's fierce protection. Her hair, parted with an iron spear tippa nod to Rome's warlike origins, was braided into 6 locks, bound with ribbons dyed in sacred hues. Livia had overseen the preparations herself, her hands steady, but her eyes distant, as if for living ghosts. "Remember, daughter," she had murmured while pinning the veil, "the gods watch, and so must we honor them. Do as they bid." Without question, Claudia had nodded, mistaking the words for pious advice, not a veiled warning born of experience. The procession through Ostia's crowded streets was a spectacle. Torches flickered against the fading light, walnuts scattered at her feet for fertility, their hard shells crunching underfoot like omens. The crowd sang the Fessinini verses body, explicit rhymes meant to ward off evil and amuse the divine. "May your nights be fruitful, your loins ever yielding," they shouted, laughter rippling through the throng. Claudia's cheeks burned beneath the veil, but she smiled, thinking it all part of the joy. Gaius awaited at the temple, his toga crisp, his expression one of calculated warmth. The augur slit the sheep's throat, inspected the entrails, and declared the signs favorable. Claudia recited the ancient vow, "Ubtu Gaius, ego Gaia, where you are Gaius, I am Gaia," simple words that transferred her from her mother's Manus legal control to her husband's. Or so she thought. But in Rome, marriage was no mere exchange of vows. It was a contract etched in flesh and witnessed by the unseen. By Hadrian's era, the empire's laws had evolved. Women like Claudia could inherit property, and divorce was commonplace among the elite. Yet the core remained unaltered. A wife's body was the vessel for legitimate heirs, and its integrity demanded verification. Not whispered assurances, but documented proof. Historians like Pliny the Elder alluded to these rites obliquely, their writings laced with euphemisms, while medical texts from Soranus of Ephesus detailed examinations with clinical detachment. Christian critics, emerging in whispers from the shadows, would later decry them as pagan obscenities, but in 118 CE, they were simply the law's shadow. As the procession reached Gaius's villa, perched on a hill overlooking the sea, the songs grew louder, more insistent. Claudia felt a flutter of nerves, excitement mingled with unease. Gaius lifted her over the threshold, his arms strong but impersonal, echoing the ancient Sabine rapes where brides were carried unwillingly. The door shut with a thud, muffling the outside world. Inside, the atrium flickered with oil lamps, revealing figures Claudia hadn't anticipated. An elderly matron, the Pronuba, clad in white robes symbolizing purity. A physician with a satchel of instruments, his face impassive. To female attendants holding ewers of scented water. A scribe with wax tablets, ready to record. And in a dim alcove, shrouded in linen, a shape that loomed like a sentinel tall, unyielding, carved from dark wood, the Pronuba approached, her grip on Claudia's wrist like a vice forged in tradition. "The public rites are done," she intoned, her voice echoing off the mosaic floors. "Now, the sacred ones begin, the gods demand assurance. The law requires witness." Claudia's heart quickened. She glanced at her mother, who had slipped in among the observers, her face pale, lips pressed thin. Livia's eyes met hers briefly, conveying a silent plea. "Endure." Few modern scholars dwell on the underbelly of Roman nuptials, preferring the romance of veils and vows. But peel back the layers, and you find a system rooted in property law. A bride was akin to a plot of land valuable only if unspoiled and productive. Virginity wasn't a virtue, it was an asset to be inspected. Consummation wasn't intimate, it was evidentiary. By the 2nd century CE, these practices had adapted to imperial reforms. Hadrian's edicts protected women from extreme paternal abuses, but the wedding night remained a theater of verification. Witnesses weren't voyeurs, they were guarantors against fraud. If a child was born too soon, or if inheritance disputes arose, their testimonies could sway magistrates. Rome's efficiency in law extended to the bedroom, turning personal moments into public records. The Pronuba led Claudia to the alcove, the air thick with incense that failed to mask the undercurrent of tension. "You must honor Mutunus Tutunus," the matron whispered, her breath warm against Claudia's ear, "the god of thresholds and beginnings. Sit upon his emblem, that he may bless your union and prepare you for what follows." Claudia's veil slipped slightly as she hesitated, her mind racing. She had heard whispers of fertility gods priapus in gardens, phallic amulets for luck, but this. The cloth fell away at her touch, revealing the idol, a wooden phallus, life-sized, mounted on a pedestal, its surface smoothed by generations of use. Not a symbol, but an instrument, carved with ritual precision. It stood as Mutunus Tutunus, the obscure deity invoked only in these shadowed rites. Ancient sources tiptoe around him. Varro mentions brides seating themselves upon the god, his language coy. Tertullian, early Christian polemicist, raged against the shameful straddling required of pagan brides. Augustine, in his City of God, decried it as demonic, using words like insidir, to mount or settle upon that imply far more than symbolism. Historians debate, was it penetration or mere contact? The texts lean toward the former, a ritual deflowering to ensure the bride's readiness, witness to prevent claims of impotence or deceit. For Claudia, the purpose crystallized in the Pronuba's guiding hands, positioning her, adjusting her stola, ensuring compliance. The witnesses' gaius included averted their eyes only partially, their presence mandated by custom. Resistance, unthinkable, it would void the marriage, brand her as defiant, ruin her family's alliances. As the rite unfolded, Claudia's world narrowed to the cold wood and the murmurs of prayers. Pain mingled with humiliation, her body a canvas for divine approval. The attendants watched, the scribe noted details, the time, her reactions, the idol's blessing. Livia, from the shadows, clenched her fists, memories of her own night flooding back. She had never spoken of it to Claudia, hoping the years had softened the edges, but here it was, inherited like a curse. When it ended, the attendants cleansed her with rose-scented water, purify her for the next phase. The physician stepped forward, his tools glinting specula, probes, cloths. "The law requires confirmation," he said flatly. In Rome, virginity checks were routine for elite brides. Soranus's gynecology text described the process: digital examinations, notations of the hymen state, comparisons pre- and post-ritual. This wasn't cruelty, it was procedure. The first exam, days earlier, had declared Claudia intact. Now, post-Mutunus, it verified the gods' intervention, subtle changes that prepared her without full breach. Everything documented, sealed with wax, for potential court use. Claudia's mind reeled as the examination proceeded, the pronuba holding her steady. The room's silence amplified every sound, every breath. Gaius paced nearby, his unease palpable. Even husbands, beneficiaries of the system, often found the mechanics distasteful. But duty bound them all: inheritance, citizenship, family honor hinged on this proof. A false virgin could taint bloodlines, an unconsummated marriage invited annulment. With verification complete, the pronuba led Claudia to the thalamos, the bridal chamber. The bed, draped in purple, faced an open doorway, lamps illuminating every corner. No privacy here. The pronuba would remain, observing from a chair, ensuring the union's completion. Attendants lingered in the hall, ears attuned. Gaius entered, shedding his toga, his movements mechanical. "The gods favor us," he muttered, more to himself than her. What followed was no lover's embrace, but a scripted act, guided by the pronuba's occasional directives, aligned thus for the ancestors' sake. Hours stretched, the night a blur of obligation. Claudia dissociated, her thoughts drifting to childhood tales of romantic heroes, now shattered. By dawn, exhaustion claimed them. The physician returned for the final inspection, sheets examined for signs. Claudia's body rechecked for consummation's marks. "It is done," he declared. The pronuba affirmed. "The wife is made." Witnesses signed the tablets. Claudia, now legally bound, felt hollow, her body no longer her own. In the years that followed, Claudia bore 3 children, managed Gaius's estates during his absences, and navigated Ostia's social whirl with grace. She became a matron of repute, hosting banquets where senators debated Hadrian's walls and philosophies. But the wedding night haunted her, a secret she buried deep, just as Livia had. When her own daughter approached marriage in 140 CE, whispers of change stirred. Christianity, spreading from the east, challenged old gods. Bishops like Ignatius condemned pagan rites as idolatrous. Hadrian's successor, Antoninus Pius, subtly reformed marital laws, emphasizing consent over coercion. Claudia warned her daughter vaguely, "The night tests you, but endure for the family's sake." Yet, in her villa, the idol of Mutunus gathered dust, unused. Christian converts smashed similar figures, rewriting marriage as a holy bond, not a transaction. By the 4th century, Constantine's edicts would ban such practices outright, consigning them to oblivion. But echoes lingered. Archaeological digs in Pompeii reveal phallic artifacts, hints of forgotten gods. Legal papyri from Egypt preserve examination records. Christian texts, in their fury, inadvertently preserve what pagans silenced. Claudia died at 55, her life a tapestry of duty and quiet rebellion. She divorced Gaius eventually, reclaiming some autonomy under evolving laws. In her final days, she confided to a trusted slave, "The flame veil burns brightest in memory, but its smoke chokes the soul." Rome's grandeur rested on such silences. Women like Claudia and Livia, the unseen pillars. Their stories, pieced from fragments, remind us, civilization's foundations often hide horrors in plain sight. What we idealize as ancient romance was, for many, a ritual of control, verification etched in flesh. And though erased, the shadows persist, whispering of what women endured to forge empires. Imagine being 19, in the year 162 CE, under the co-rule of Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus, when Rome's golden age masks deeper fractures. You are Aurelia, granddaughter of Livia Tersa, daughter of Claudia Valeria, standing in a lavish atrium in Rome itself, the eternal city pulsing with forums, temples, and secrets. Your veil flames orange in the lamplight, but the joy of the procession feels hollow now. You've heard fragments, whispers from slaves, evasive answers from your mother about old customs fading away. Yet as the door seals shut, and unfamiliar faces circle you, you realize the past clings like ivy on marble. Not all traditions die quietly. Some linger in elite families, defiant against imperial reforms, hidden behind closed doors where Christianity's light hasn't fully pierced. Tonight, Aurelia will confront the diluted echo of her ancestors' ordeal, a ritual softened by time, but still sharp enough to wound. Rome's empire expands, but its women remain chained to verification's ghost. Aurelia's wedding had been grander than her grandmother's or mother's. Marcus Aurelius's philosophical reign brought subtle shifts. Public celebrations swelled with poetry recitals alongside the old songs, walnuts replaced partly by flower petals for a touch of Hellenistic elegance. Her betrothed, Titus Flavius, a Stoic-influenced senator's son, was closer in age, 24, and their meetings beforehand hinted at mutual respect. Claudia, now a divorced matron of influence, had arranged it carefully, hoping to spare her daughter the full brutality she and Livia endured. Times change, Claudia had said while braiding Aurelia's hair with the ceremonial spear. The emperor speaks of virtue and reason. Many houses have abandoned the old ways, but her voice wavered, and Aurelia caught the unspoken, not all. The procession wound through Rome's bustling streets, past the Forum's grandeur, torches reflecting off the Tiber. Fessinini verses rang out, tamer now crude jokes softened under philosophical influence. Aurelia recited Ubtu Titus, ego tia, her voice steady. Titus lifted her over the threshold with genuine care, his eyes meeting hers through the veil. The crowd dispersed, and the door closed on a smaller gathering than legends described. No physician with cold instruments, no scribe with wax tablets. But there, the Pronuba, an ancient holdover from a conservative faction, flanked by two trusted matrons, family allies sworn to discretion. And in the corner, shrouded still, though smaller, less imposing, a remnant idol of Mutunus Tutunus, carved in ivory now, a symbolic relic the family claimed was for blessing only. The Pronuba, voice creased with age, spoke softly, "The public bond is sealed, child. But for houses like ours, tied to ancient patrician lines, the gods demand a private affirmation. Not as in old tales, no witnesses beyond us, no harsh examinations. Merely a gesture to honor fertility and submission." Aurelia's pulse raced. Claudia stood nearby, her face a mask of resolve. Having compromised, the full rite was gone, banished by evolving laws and Christian whispers in elite circles. Hadrian's reforms lingered. Antonine emperors discouraged extremes. Yet this family, clinging to ancestral purity for political leverage, preserved a vestige to sit briefly upon the idol's lap, clothed, a light mounting as the Pronuba called it, evoking blessing without penetration. Aurelia hesitated, glancing at Titus, who shifted uncomfortably. He, educated in Stoicism, found even this archaic. But refusal risked scandal in their circle. Alliances fractured over impiety, drawing on her grandmother Livia's unspoken strength and mother's quiet endurance. Aurelia approached. The cloth lifted, revealing the ivory figure, phallic still, but diminished, more art than instrument. The Pronuba guided her to sit astride it momentarily, stole intact, a symbolic straddle, while murmurs invoked fertility gods. No pain, no blood, but the humiliation burned the watchful eyes, the forced posture proclaiming submission before her husband could claim her. Tears pricked Aurelia's eyes as it ended swiftly. No cleansing ritual followed. Instead, scented oils and embraces from the matrons. "The gods are pleased," the Pronuba declared. No physician's probe imperial edicts had curtailed such invasions, deeming them unnecessary with trust and dowries secured otherwise. The chamber door remained ajar, but only the Pronuba observed the consummation from afar, retiring once satisfied by sounds and shadows. Titus approached gently, whispering apologies for the foolish relic, his touch tentative, almost loving. The night unfolded not as verification's theater, but as awkward intimacy, the old rite's shadow lifting slightly under philosophy's dawn. By morning, Aurelia felt transformed, not shattered like Livia, not hollow like Claudia, but angered. The diluted ritual exposed the absurdity. Why any intrusion at all? As years passed, she bore children, debated philosophy in salons, and quietly advocated change. Marcus Aurelius's meditations influenced her. She saw marriage as partnership, not property transfer. When Christianity reached her circle, persecuted still, but grown, she converted secretly, finding solace in a faith that elevated women's souls. In 180 CE, as Marcus died and Commodus ascended, Aurelia, now 37, counseled her own daughter, "The veil hides much, but demand your voice." The idol was destroyed in a house fire, never replaced. By Constantine's era, such remnants vanished entirely, Christianity's triumph erasing the last echoes. Aurelia lived to 72, witnessing Rome's shift. Her lineage's women, Livia's raw endurance, Claudia's quiet rebellion, her own defiant reform formed a chain of resilience. The saffron veil's flame warmed some, scorched others, but they passed the light forward, dimming the shadows of verification forever. What lingered was not the rite, but the question: how many generations paid for certainty with their dignity? Rome built aqueducts and laws on such silences, but women like Aurelia ensured the cracks let a new light.